Hello? There it is. All right. Let's pop this out. Hey, Jerry, you definitely are first. You beat all the hooligans. Okay. We will see how well the stream holds up today because there's something wrong with my computer. Hey, Roman, make a Viking. How are you guys today? Had to get a replacement phone this week. I got this cheap one for $100. Let me tell you, when you get used to a flagship processor, a non-flagship processor is really annoying. My damn phone died. The battery only lasts for about 10 minutes now. It's puffed up so bad, it's actually bulging the entire back of the phone all the way to here. It's actually starting to push the components into the back of the LCD screen. You can see a bright spot where the components are being shoved into the back of the screen. And no warranty, no battery replacement service. So now I ordered a battery and I gotta hope I can figure out how to tear this apart without breaking it. Because if I break that screen, it's another $100. Ah. Well, you can go away, whatever you were. Um, the EU, the EU might be doing something about that. There looks like they're looking to start compelling phone makers to use replaceable batteries. About damn time somebody's do something about that. You know, if they would use lithium iron phosphate batteries, it wouldn't be so bad. You know, they would last 10 years. But they use lithium ion batteries, which are good for about 18 months. Well, 18 months to 36 months, depending on the phone, quality, battery, luck. But after 18 months, you're on borrowed time. Which is still amazing. I once found an old Sprint PCS black and white flip phone in the storage trailer in Egg Harbor when I had the store there. That phone was 20 years old when I found it. It turned on. I mean, it only turned on for a few seconds before the battery died, but it turned on after sitting in that trailer for 20 years. They certainly don't make the batteries to that quality anymore, that's for sure. I'm doing okay. There's still something wrong with my eyes. Everything's a little bit blurry from the pus from the allergy reaction. The steroids work. You know, nothing hurts, no pain or anything like that. But the problem doesn't go away. I stopped smearing the steroid salve cream in my eye, and it comes back. So he's gonna get me a referral to a specialist, I guess an actual eye doctor, to look at it and figure out what's going on. If I had to guess, pinon pollen. Apparently, it's really really bad this year. And even though I've never had an allergy problem in the past, ever, like I've never had allergies, apparently moving across the country can expose you to stuff that can expose allergies you didn't know you had. Yay! One of my favorite cameras is the little Instago action camera. I wish I could get them to sponsor me. But because I want that new one, but I can't afford it. So it's a little 1440p camera. It goes for about 30 minutes. And it's one of the highest quality cameras you can get in this tiny form factor. I finally got around to making a sled for it for my rockets. So this will thread on to my existing rockets. You know, I could take this rocket here and just unscrew this thread right here and put this right in the middle there, and then put the rest of it back on. So I can effectively make any of my rockets for the most part. The video might get a little jittery. There's something wrong with the computer. I don't know what it is, but after a couple minutes, as you can see now, the video starts to get jittery, and I think it's because the CPU is being throttled. And the audio seems to stay intact. Like when I record a video, the video gets all jumpy like this, but the audio stays intact, so we're going to go with it. I think the fan finally died in the computer because I don't hear a fan going anymore. So I'm going to have to take it apart and figure out which fan died and get a replacement. So I'm assuming it's not being properly cooled, and therefore it's throttling the CPU to avoid, burning anything up. And obviously what it's throttling the CPU to is not enough for OBS to run smoothly. It says it's not dropping any frames, but it's possible the camera's just not sending enough frames because of the throttling. Not a whole lot. I think I'm going to actually use the lawnmower for the first time this year, just to clean up part of the yard to make it more accessible. Yeah, just knock things over, kitty. Kitties are doing good. I finally have a makeshift refrigerator solution coming. I've given up buying a used refrigerator. I've bought 2 already, and they were both bad. So yeah, I'm still living out of my electric cooler. But I did find a 4.4 cubic foot all fridge, mini fridge. No freezer section. And, what was it? 120 bucks, 130 bucks, and I'm going to order a second one and stack them, and that'll be about the size of a regular fridge, and that'll give me 8.8 cubic feet of proper refrigerator space. And I'll have a 2-year warranty on those and battery backup and all that stuff. And also, because it's 2 separate fridges stacked on top of each other, if one fails, I still have the other. So I should have the first one next Monday and the second one probably a week later. And so 300 bucks, and I'll have 8.8 cubic feet of refrigerator space, which is plenty for 2 of us. Yes, the cheapest new fridge I could find is $600. I can't afford that. And I've already spent 200 bucks on used fridges, which is really annoying because it means I'm spending close to 500. 200 for the used fridges, 300 for the new ones. That's 500. For 100 more, I could have got a full-size fridge, but I can't get the money back from the used ones I bought, so that's too bad. Anything else? No snakes. I've seen lizards, but no snakes. Haven't got lucky enough to find snakes. I'm hoping, to encourage bull snakes, because they'll eat the rats and the mice. Drives me nuts when they get on the shelf back here and I hear them fight. But so I made the sled for the camera. It mostly prints in vase mode, vase mode, vase mode. This part prints with a little bit of infill because you have a double wall that dips down inside here. So what will happen is the camera will just slip right in like that. So that's all the camera that's going to stick out. I'm also going to put 2 rails here, well, channels I'm going to put 2 channels here and have a sliding cover that's going to be aerodynamic, and that cover will slide over the camera. Not only will that make the rocket aerodynamic, but it will keep the camera from popping out, which would be bad. You know, $300 camera, you don't want it going popping out. And then also the shroud will keep the shock cord from snagging on the camera when it pops the parachute. And then when you want to check the camera, you just slide the shroud up and pull the camera out. So that is in the works. I'm having trouble getting it to print these top layers in here. I'm not sure why. The geometry should work. No, you don't need to counterbalance. This is, I've strapped half-pound cameras to the side of a rocket, and the rocket doesn't care. It just doesn't care. It's not nearly... Drag is going to be far more important than weight. I mean, I could dangle this camera out here, and it's just not going to care. The rocket it just doesn't care. The stability margin in the rocket is more than enough to make up for the difference, so no need to counterbalance. If you really, really want to, you could put a second shroud on this side so that it's aerodynamically equal, but all you're doing is adding drag to the rocket, which if you want to keep it low, I guess will work, but not needed. Nice thing about the Instago is that you only got about 20-30 minutes of battery power in the camera, but that's more than enough for a flight. And then when the rocket comes down, you take the little case and you put the camera in there, and you see it starts charging the case from the battery built into the case. And so between flights, you can keep the camera charged. Hey, that AliExpress app, I've been getting parachutes of all things. So I've been getting these. I place a 3-item order almost every day to get more of these parachutes because they usually sell these for $2 or $3 each. Yeah. Yeah, this is a AliExpress $1.99 thing. They usually sell these for like $3 each. So getting 4 of them for $2, oh, hell yeah. But I got 2 things I want to do with this. That first, I want to make a rocket where this is one of those the camera. No, that's $300. That's from Instago. I bought that a year and a half ago when it came out. They have a new one out that actually has a color screen on the case, but I can't afford it. And it does 2.7K, I think. Yeah, we're doing okay. Oh, it's actually tied. Nice. So this is one of those little hand-thrown parachutes that has a little army guy on the bottom. And but it's a really surprisingly nice parachute. And it uses this webbing instead of shroud lines, so it can never tangle, which is really nice. And of course, it's not plastic, although you definitely want to protect this from heat. But it's a pretty substantial parachute. I want to say 15-inch, 12-inch, 15-inch parachute. So not only can I use this for one of the original purposes that I wanted to get these for was I want to pack a rocket full of these. I have a bay on the side. Well, Temu is not going to be the problem. It's going to be the sellers on Temu, just like on AliExpress. Use your brain, use your judgment. You know, these would qualify. These $1.99 deals would qualify as a too good to be true kind of thing, except that they're official. They're a doorbuster thing from the company. So as you can see, they're legit. I've gotten dozens and dozens and dozens of items from them. And but when you're looking at other random things, you got to use your brain, you know. If they're offering you a $200 widget for $10, walk away. You're just going to lose your $10. Usually Temu will back you. They claim. But still, use your brain. If it's too good a deal, walk away. You know, if that price seems to be the price everybody's offering it for, it might be legit. You also might not get what you asked for. You might get a lower quality version of what you asked for. So use your brain, you know, use your good judgment. YouTube is not receiving enough what? It says something is overloaded. Well, it's with anything. When you order from, as soon as you cross international borders, you lose any legal protections you would normally have in your country. And so you have to take that into consideration. You know, what are you going to do? Fly to China and sue somebody? Will the court even hear you over a $200 item? It's just not going to happen. So your head. But I want to be able to stuff like 10 of these in a rocket. I want to make a rocket with a hatch that's going to, like a bay, that's just going to go open up and then just drop, 10, 15, 20 of these out of the rocket. And that is so weird. Encoding overloaded. Is there any way to reduce the loading? Probably if I move a little less, it'll have less encoding to do. Yeah, I'm only getting 3 to 8 frames per second. Wow. Yeah, not much I could do about it. Video is stuttering. That is on my end. There's something wrong with my computer. I think the cooling fan has died, and so the CPU is throttling to compensate for the lack of cooling. I haven't taken it. It just died like 2 days ago when I was making those HueForge videos, and I haven't had a chance to tear apart the computer yet. So I wanted to get a whole bunch of these to put in the rockets to deploy a whole bunch of paratroopers. But these are also big enough to be the straight up. Yep, that PC that's a year and a half old. Yep, the fan died already. Nice, but it's a fan. That's what happens with fans. Modern fans. Old PCs, those fans never died. But these are also large enough to be the primary parachute for the rocket. So I'm going to be using them in my rockets too. So the more of these I can get, the better. A typical parachute this size is going to cost you, $7 to $11 from a dealer. So it's a nice deal. I also got metric tape measures. They have the, what is it, 3.5 meter? 3 meter. So it's all in millimeters, which is nice. And I also love how compact it is. It's super compact. And they also have a 5 meter one, but it costs more. But now the 5 meter one is available for the $1.99 price. I was like, okay, I got a couple of those. Been working on some rockets as well because term's coming up. I made one of the most hated, but everybody has one because they're just such a neat looking rocket. I made a bullpup. So I got the bullpup 12D. That actually came out really nice. I gotta figure out how to make decals. Because obviously a scale missile looks a lot better when it has a decal. And then one of my favorite rockets was because it was one of my first larger rockets. The AGM or AIM 54C Phoenix missile. And of course, it was just called the Phoenix from Estes. And this is a 10% downscale to match my 60mm tubing. But there is our Phoenix missile. Now this is a direct clone of the Estes version, and I found out that the nose cone is the wrong shape. It's 2 times longer than it needs to be, and this section of the rocket is twice as long as it needs to be if you want to be scale. Now, the reason SDs would have not made it scale is, number one, they're going to use a nose cone they already have instead of making a new blow mold for a new nose cone. And they're also going to what? Yeah, then you found the rest. That's one of the reasons why I'm buying so many of these. I think I got like 6 of them. Because instead, see, the problem usually happens where you'll go to your place to get your tape measure, you'll use it somewhere else, then you'll leave it there and you'll forget it. Now I can just have one everywhere. This way I don't have to move them. Plus, it's hard to find, nice, compact, metric tape measures here in the U.S. So I figure I might as well grab them while they're $2. And so I made a scale version of the Phoenix as well. That one, the tall one, is true to the SD's original kit. This one is closer to the actual missile. So it's got the proper length armament and guidance section. It's got the proper length and almost correct length nose cone. I added the little scale details here, the original one. I even added a little cylinder right here because that's actually where a motor and a bearing is, and these fins on the real thing turn. And so I added those little scale details in the scale shape. I even put the little grooves in the armament section. So the way this works is that this is the control section, propulsion section, armament section where the warhead is, and the guidance section. And then, of course, you have the nose. And, of course, the gray and white that the actual missile is. So that's pretty neat. Now, this one's obviously going to require more nose weight to be stable because it's so much shorter and it's got so much fin area. Another thing I did was I beefed up the nose cone in vase mode. So this has 3 times the ribs that most of my nose cones have. And the result is it's quite a bit heavier. So I might do the same thing with the coupler here. The only problem is the coupler goes back pretty far. So you don't want to shift too much of that weight. So I might just gang up the ribs on the top part here, but not this part here. Otherwise, you're mixing CP and CG. But I might, on some models, I should be able to add enough weight in the plastic itself that you won't have to add nose weight to make it fly stable. So that's going to be fun to fly. Of course, you can still get, if you haven't gotten one already, you can still get calipers off that $2 thing on AliExpress with the app. But just remember, it doesn't come with batteries. So you will have to buy the batteries separate. The stream's going to be pretty short today because we have an appointment in a couple hours. And I also have to tear down this PC and figure out what the hell's wrong with it. Because this 8 frames per second is getting annoying. Anything else that I got that was interesting? The new razor is working really well. So this one is on their choice super sales. You usually get it for about $13, but I really like it. It's got a display screen that shows you how much power it's used, how much you have left, and it's USB-C. And the head appears to be a bit more robust than some of the cheaper ones, although I haven't taken it apart yet to see what it looks like inside, to see how much of it's plastic and how much of it's metal. Oh, that's where the cover went. I was like, I knew that cover was here somewhere. For the there we go. Make sure this is current. Oh man. Oh, they have new I bet they're made by the same company, but you can now get Sun Chips and you can get Doritos. Do I have a Dorito one? Yeah. And Doritos, basically Pringles cans. So now I can make Sun Chip and Doritos rockets. Yeah, tape measures are like 10mm sockets. They're always disappearing. I redesigned the Citadel rocket to fit the 60mm airframe, and Eryone sent me some PETG, well, one roll, and Atomic sent me some of their Blood Diamond, and the result is stunning. Look at how pretty that is. I also put the bullpup tail gun on the rocket, so now this will hit the ground first and protect the ring. But you notice the ring is a different color? That's because the ring is removable. I made the ring into a separate piece. You'll have to glue it on. If you try to fly it like that, it's just going to pop off. But this is short enough, and the cavity holds the ring so that you can pop it in place and then glue it. You know, put some CA at the joints here, and that'll hold the ring in place. But this allows you to print the ring in a different color than the rest of the rocket, so you can have a 2-color rocket. That came out really neat. Yeah, nobody blew up their hands last night. To be fair, they're messing with mortars. Most consumer accessible fireworks, aren't going to kill you or maim you. They can though, so be careful. But yeah, I'm very pleased with how this came out. I finally resliced the files, and what I do, you see that little band right there that's a different color? That's because I told it to print that at 1.4 extrusion multiplier. The problem was I have to fine tune the size of this to get it to fit inside of here. Too loose and it'll drag separate. Too tight and it might burst instead of popping off. So instead, I leave it the slightly looser side, and then I have this band here that's thicker, just by increasing the extrusion multiplier for that section of the print. And the result is you get a much more snug fit without it being too tight. So it stays straight, and it shouldn't drag separate. You might still need to put a little tape on there to keep it from drag separating, because just going from one location to another, change of humidity, altitude, pressure, temperature is going to change how the parts fit. And a drag separate these are technically two independent bodies. Even though they're slid together, from a physics standpoint, these are two separate bodies. And when the motor stops thrusting, drag is going to slow down this part of the rocket more than it's going to slow down this part of the rocket. So let's say it's going 150 miles an hour. This might slow down to 120 miles an hour, but this might only slow down to 125 miles an hour. Since this part of the rocket is technically going faster, it might have enough delta V to overcome the friction between the nose cone and the shoulder, and this will actually come off at speed while the rocket is still going up. And of course, the moment this separates from the rocket, this is now aerodynamically unstable. Boom! And then the rocket goes crazy and tears itself to pieces. So you have to have enough friction on this part to prevent it from accelerating ahead of this part. It's called a drag sep. Some people mistakenly think it's a Kato. No, your nose cone was just too loose. It kept going while the rest of the rocket slowed down. Kind of like when someone hits the brakes in your car and you go sliding forward because they hit the brakes in the car. The same thing. Basically when the rocket motor stops firing, it's like hitting the brakes. And this part is like you inside the car. It wants to keep going forward. So you need something like your seatbelt hold you in place and keep you from going forward, independent of the car and smacking your head against the windshield. That's what making sure this is tight enough to not do that. I did the same thing with the Vega. This is the Vega. It's just a multiple ring fin rocket, but same deal. The tubes are printed as separate pieces, and you'll have to glue them into place. But that's pretty neat. Just remember, if you decide to get SD cards off of the AliExpress site, make sure you only get the SD cards that have pictures. If it doesn't have pictures, walk away. There's just no real way, unless you've dealt with that vendor in the past, there's no way for you to know if it's actually a legitimate memory card or not. None of these are fast, but they're all legit. They all are 32 and 64 gig, like they say. I also found out I can get custom drives like these. So it's got the artillery logo on there. So I can order custom drives from China and I'll put my custom logo on there. They also have those flat cards that have the little flat USB port that pops out of the side. You know, that does that. You know, pops out the side like that. But that's like business card size, so I'll be able to put a full business card like logo on there. And they're not that bad. They're less than $2 a piece when you order them in bulk. And this way, if somebody wants to buy rockets from me in person, I can, instead of emailing it to them, I can give them an actual, you know, Trust and Thrust rocketry card, and then load onto that card whatever rockets they buy from me. You know, I can just, you know, charge them $1, and then if they have their own thumb drive, or bring back the drive I sell them, or they want me to email it, give them $1 discount. And then I also saw on Printables, I think it was Printables, someone posted Rocket Pop jewelry, except it's not Rocket Pop. It's actually called Bomb Pop. I thought it was called Rocket Pop. Huh. I guess it looked like a rocket, so I always called it Rocket Pop. But it's actually called Bomb Pop. And they have 100% restricted. No remixing, no nothing. So I said screw it and made my own. So I went into Tinkercad and made my own Rocket Pop. And, you know, it's got the grooves and all that. It's got the hole at the top. And this is all Pet G. And this will be pretty neat because I'm going to sell a jewelry set. You know, 2 earrings and a necklace. So I'm going to try my hand at that. And plus, I just think it looks cool. I like that. I want to make a big 60mm one and make a rocket out of it. Rocket Pop rocket. And I got the 3 colors, so I might as well. So that's something else that I'm working on. And I'm also going to release my case soon. I redesigned this case, so instead of being a hinged lid case like the original developer did, which was very delicate, mine is a slide case. So there's a parallelogram shape on here and here, so that these parts have no thin, delicate, you know, hinges or anything, and then they just slide together. And that also means this can't open up in your drawer. You can only open it by sliding it. So it should be more secure. I want to figure out a way to put like a divot down here so that this will kind of like You know, it is really easy to slide, and it was actually tight. But as you know, with 3 parts, when you slide it back and forth, it gets loose, and there's no real way to stop that. But maybe I could put a bump on the end so that it gets tight for a second and then loose again. This way it'll stay shut. This way there's less chance of it popping open inside your case, which you would not want it to do. You can also get digital scales so you can weigh your stuff. Like I weigh all these rockets to, make sure I put a strong enough motor in it to fly them. And I showed you guys this before about my little drug dealer scale. It's so freaking cute. It looks like a car fob remote, and it's about the size of a car fob remote, but it's a scale. It's an itty bitty scale. I think it's like 150 gram limit or 200 gram limit. Little tiny light up screen. I love this so much. Because the larger scale has a tough time measuring lightweight stuff like this. With a 1 gram limit, you're not really measuring anything. Like, how much does this weigh? I don't even know how much it weighs. This doesn't fly, so I don't care. But this weighs 1.2 grams. So the full-size scale wouldn't even weigh it. So those are 1.2 grams each. All done in vase mode, just to save time and filament. I print, 9 of this blue section, and then I load a second G-code file and print 9 of the white section, and then I load a third G-code file and print the red section. The regular way I do it. I do not make my own motors. I buy them. I buy commercially made motors, but I would really like to get into making my own motor, so I'm probably going to join a TRA section, a Triple E section, and get into EX, because I would like to be able to make my own motors. Oh, one of the guys I chat with on the internet, he doesn't like buy rockets very much because he thinks they're too weak. They're not good for HPR. Well, yeah. He built a rocket, a 7.5-inch rocket, probably about that big. I want to say 3 feet, 3.5 feet. A little stubby rocket. I love stubby rockets. But his is solid plastic. It's solid PLA plus. There's no 100% infill, except for obviously the center of the rocket. He flew it on a 54 millimeter homemade motor, which was equivalent to about a J53. He says 16-second burn time. Yes, please. I want a 16-second burn time. My gliders scream, give me 16-second burn time. Yeah, I see the CPU jumping up to like 60-70%, and then it goes back down to 20%. And I'm guessing that's the throttling to keep it from overheating. I should have booted up a laptop, or hell, even use a cell phone. But yeah, I'd like to get into making my own motors so I can make motors like that. Nice long burn ends, because that's the kind of motors I enjoy. I'm not really into the bang pop, type rocket motor. It's just not as fun to me. I want to see it. I want to enjoy it. I want to hear it. I want to feel it. I love how he says, they're not really high power compatible, my vase mode rockets, and then he flies his rocket on a non-high power motor. I mean, yes, technically a J motor is a high power motor, but only technically, only on paper. I mean, his J53 is no different than an F50. It just burns for 16 seconds. So even though he's using a J motor, he's using a low thrust long burn motor, which is not really going to stress the airframe at all. So what I figure I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of his rocket, except my fins will be like this. I'm going to make a 7.5-inch version of this using these kind of fins because I could print these fins in vase mode. I love how this came out. I got to print more nose cones. I'm short on nose cones. So, I'm going to make a copy of his rocket, but I'm going to print it in my vase mode style. So his rocket on the pad was 13.5 kilograms. That's a heavy rocket. That's a beefy rocket. That wasses 13.5 times 2.2. That's a 30-pound rocket. I think I could copy his rocket and have it weigh less than 4 pounds. Now that's just the rocket. His 30 pounds obviously includes parachute, recovery, shroud line, shock cords, probably some nose weight, and a motor, of course. That's probably half the mass of the rocket. So my 2-pound rocket might be 4 pounds, or my 4-pound rocket might be 6 pounds, because the other advantage of making the rocket so light is I won't need as heavy a motor, and I won't need as large a parachute or a recovery system, since I don't have to bring back a 30-pound rocket. So I'm going to build a rocket that is ostensibly the same dimensions as his rocket, but it's going to be a fraction of the weight, and I'm going to fly it on the same motor. So I'm going to use a... he originally said it was equivalent to a J200, so that would be like close to an Aerotech J250 W. So I'll fly it on an Aerotech J250. See how it holds up. But that will be in the future because that's a $150 motor plus the casing. You know, you're probably looking at $350 for the first flight because it's going to be a $200 motor casing. I'm assuming that's what a 54mm case is going to cost. And then you need the motor itself, which is another $150. The casing is reusable, but the motor grains that go in the casing are one use, of course. And, that's cool. Tech ingredients, huh? I'm going to save that. Hello, alien destination. Hey, alien destination. You need a new ride? It's got the latest in warp cell technology, super maneuverable photon torpedoes. Call me the rocket hustler. So once I'm done fabbing up getting this to work correctly, now the one thing I'll have to do is that this surface in here, I'll have to cover that in aluminum or wood just to make sure it doesn't burn through. You haven't finished work, huh? Well, yeah. What are you? What are you? 4 or 5 hours off from us? So 3 time zones in the U.S., probably 3 time zones across the Atlantic. So you're at least 6 or 7 hours, right? 5 o'clock. And it's 10 o'clock. Yeah, 7 hours. Okay, I was pretty close. Rocket Wangler? Are you calling me a wanker? No new 3D printers. Um, I do have actually a couple of printers that you guys haven't seen, but those are printers that I bought. I have a Voxel Lab printer. I have a 334 from Monoprice, the D9, I think, that I haven't messed with yet. So we'll eventually pull those apart. I'm working on the Star Duster. It's proving to be a bit of a challenge. I actually managed to get the round square fuselage that it has and actually meld that into the body. It actually came out pretty darn nice. I put the logo, the little trident logo in the back, and I even got the little airlock doors actually embedded in the surface of the model. So the fuselage, that's not tight. You see, this is the old one. It doesn't have the fatter part. You can see it's real loose. That would absolutely drag Sep on the way up. Yeah, it's not even tight. Look at that. I have to work on that. The problem is the wings are huge. I didn't realize just how big they were. So that's what these little ribs are for. It's to allow you to glue these big giant wings on. That goes like that. It's not the connection, it's the PC. My a couple days ago, my computer started stuttering and not working correctly, and I think the cooling fan died, and never got the back porch finished. And the guy who said he was going to help me finish it because I gave him all the tools, yet he burned me. He never came through. So that's how that will go. And it looks great. I even got the little nacelles. These will go on the end of the wingtips like this. Am I doing that right? There it is. So they'll get glued onto the tip like that. And of course, I have the front part as well printed. And that'll get glued on there. The problem is these are almost impossible to print. And they also require a really big printer. Like you need basically you need this Mingda to print them, because you need at least 220 by 220 by 260 to print them. I didn't realize just how big they were, because they print like this. They print sitting on their tail like that. And as you can see, well, you might not be able to see on the camera, but the print, yeah, you can't see that. There it is. It gets real sloppy top here because it's wiggling around when it's printing. And I've got to make the wings a bit smaller so that you can print on an Ender 3. You know, something like a Prusa or an Ender 3. And I have to figure out a set of instructions to help people stabilize something this tall. So the way I stabilize this is, you can see it's good up to about here. So before it gets to that point there, what you would do is you get yourself some bamboo skewers and you would hot glue the bamboo skewer to the bed of the printer, and then hot glue the end of the skewer to the model like that. and that will provide you with 3-point stability and stabilize the model so the rest of it print. You should only have to add 1. 2 would be better, but you should only have to add 1. So basically you'd put a dab of hot glue on the end of the skewer, drop it on your bed, let it fall against the model. You have to do this while it's printing. You let it fall against the model, and then you put a dab of hot glue there. And that will stabilize the model and keep it from doing the wiggle, wiggle, wiggle dance as it prints. I just didn't realize how big the wings were in the scale of that model. So I gotta finish that. I've also just about finished the Century Argus. The top half is printing in the back right now. The tin can failed. For some reason, that one printer does not like PETG. It doesn't stick to the bed properly. It's driving me crazy. So I have to use a different printer to print it. I'll probably use the Mingda because it does such a good job. I tell you, I've been beating the crap out of this Mingda, and it just works well. There is still some ABL drift where it doesn't always zero to exactly the same point each time. It's not lag, it's not you, it's my PC. The audio should be clear. So far, the audio seems to be okay. It's the video that is screwed up. I gotta take apart this computer. If I haven't figured out how to fix this by next week, I will either use a phone or a laptop to get around it. See you later, TRT. Yeah, 8 frames per second is a bit rough. So it makes you think there's something wrong on your end when there isn't. Is there anything I can... I don't think I can change the stream settings during a stream. Yeah, it would not like that if I tried. I don't think there's anything I can do while I'm streaming. I would have to stop and change it and start again. And it would have to be a new stream because it'd be new physical settings. What do you guys think of the Hue Forge issue? Am I reading that wrong or what? I can't see how I'm reading it wrong. Based on some of the author's comments that he posted on the internet, he seems to think he owns the STL the software creates. And that would explain why he has that kind of wording in his license. He thinks he owns that STL file. And if you're someone who creates content, artwork for, to make a living, that should bother you. I mean, that'd be no different than Stanley claiming that anything I make with this chisel belongs to them because I use their chisel to make it. And that should be a problem for people, but people do not see having a problem with it. It's as if they're willing to tolerate it because they like the software, so they're willing to let it go, but they're giving up ownership of their content. I could never put one of my photographs into that program knowing that he would claim to own the output. It's not about buying it and owning it, because technically in the United States you can't buy software. There's no legal way that I'm aware of for you to buy software in the United States. The court system has, in my opinion, unconstitutionally judged that you are not buying the software, you're just buying a license. Well, a license has value to me, so the price of the software should be zero. I mean, what's the value in a license? There is none. I mean, the value is the software. It would be like, buying this and finding out you never own it and the manufacturer can take it back anytime they want. Nobody would tolerate that. Yet, for some reason, we tolerate it with software. Well, if the EULA can restrict your rights, then you don't have rights. You have privileges. That's not how rights work. Rights are endowed. They exist by you simply existing. Privileges are granted. And as far as I'm aware, a software license can't take away what is yours. Now, I think part of the problem is that the wording he is using is... well, that's different. They're trying to do an end run around patent and trademark. They're trying to abuse a trademark to give them monopoly control over what should be a patent. It can't be a patent. That was already rejected by the USPTO because it's a basic shape, and you can't patent a basic shape. A trademark, however, you can. You can trademark a basic shape, but it has to be unique, distinguishable, and obviously representative of your company. It has to have some artistic value. They're abusing the trademark system to try to end run around the patent system. That's different. That's just a matter of money to fight it. What QForge is doing is a little different. Now, if you read the software license itself, it says the licensor grants the licensee you limited privileges to the software. They call it rights, but it's not. It's privileges. He's allowed to do that because he owns the software. A founding principle of property is that rights are derived from property. The reason I have a right to tell you you can't drive my car, or you can't steal my food, or you can't squat in my house is because I own them. I own them, therefore I have the rights to them. So without ownership, there's no rights. You can't have rights without ownership. Even the ethereal rights require property. Your right to free speech. Well, you own your voice. That is how you derive those rights. My problem is, no, contract law is not allowed to violate actual law. You can't steal from people by hiding behind contract law. You're not allowed to do that. Contract law is not absolute. Contracts have to abide by the law. And you can't take from other people because of a contract. You're not allowed to do that. The other person's not even allowed to agree on it. You see, I don't agree with that. I do not agree that you can give rights. I don't believe that's legal. I think the court is wrong. Because those aren't rights, those are privileges. A copyright is not a right. That's a misnomer. You have no right to copyright. We recognize that the public domain is for the betterment of all of society, and public domain is the right. Copyright is an incorrect term. It's a copy privilege. because the government is granting you a temporary monopoly over your works in the interest of, we want people to develop works, and so they have to be able to live and eat and pay rent and have a home and a family, and so they have to be able to earn an income. So we as a society have elected to temporarily forestall the entry of your creation into the public domain and to grant you a temporary monopoly in the form of trademark, patent, or copyright. So just because the word copyright has right in the word doesn't mean it's a right. It's a privilege. It's a privilege that we grant creators of content and works, and artists and engineers, etc. But it is not a right. It's a privilege. So you cannot give up copyright because you don't have a copyright. There's no such thing as a copyright. We call it a copyright, but the correct way of saying it would be copy privilege. And yes, you can give up your limited monopoly because it was a privilege granted to you by someone else, and you can give that up. It's definitely not enforceable, and I would ignore it out of hand, like I do with many what I consider improper license terms. Problem is, it's dangerous in the United States, because in the United States, they can set a precedent. For example, this concept that software is a license and not a purchase is complete and total bullshit. But it was created via contract law, via the courts, and not via Congress. So it was not created via the Constitution. It was created out of whole cloth by the court system. And that's illegal. They're not allowed to do that. Anything it does has to be in compliance with the Constitution. But this country stopped obeying the Constitution 100 years ago. So, but that's a completely separate topic that we can spend hours on. The point is, he is saying that he is not stealing from people. Yes, he is. And he is saying that he is not claiming commercial rights over your creations. The problem is, yes, he is. I've had people say, well, but he's saying he's not. It doesn't matter what he says. What he says means nothing. Because the only thing the court is going to care about is what the contract says. And the contract says he is. Okay. In a contract, you only control what you own. You can't control what you don't own. I can't sign a contract. It can't be legal for me to sign a contract with Ethan's dad 3D saying that you grant me ownership of the White House. But you say it's contract law. You can give up anything you want in a contract, right? No, you can't. The contract has to abide by the law. I can't make a contract granting myself ownership of the White House because I don't own the White House. It's not mine to grant ownership of. He is allowed to grant you limited privileges to his software because he owns the software. His right to do that, his authority and power to do that, is derived from the fact that he owns the software. The problem is he's using the same wording regarding your content that you create with the software. And the problem is he doesn't own that. But he thinks he does. Let me show you. I was surprised by this because I didn't think I assumed that he was just making a mistake. No, it does not have to go to the courts, and it never will. Never go to the courts. This will never see the inside of a courtroom. Q4 is no one. It's this big. Okay? And the people who are buying the software from him are this big. We are nothing. This will never see a courtroom. Courts cost a lot of money. I'm not saying he's nothing as an insult. I'm saying he is nothing literally. Like, he just, there's not enough, not enough money here to ever see the inside of a courtroom over this. Let's see. It's being a little slow, so bear with me. Let's see here. I guess I better put it on this screen. Come on, you piece of garbage. I'm going to turn off my camera while we're talking this. That should help reduce the lag quite a bit. Yeah, definitely. So, he's trying that he has corrected the issue of George owning your files. He says he's corrected this error. No, he is not. Okay. Now, oh, go away. So here he says marketing rights. I have 0 marketing or promotional rights claimed to the license file. Yes, he does. He says commercial rights not be transferred. That's marketing rights. We're not talking about visibility. We're talking about ownership and control. This is not true, nor ownership of any kind to your products in a promotional capacity. The ability to transfer the works to someone else is restricted by his license, and he does not have that right. But I can't, because it could set a precedent. We've already seen the courts are willing to agree to things that are wrong and illegal and make them enforceable. And we have to nip stuff like this in the butt before it gets to a company that is willing to spend millions of dollars to keep a right they shouldn't have. Where do I want to show you here? That's what needs to happen, but this is such a niche hobby that, that's probably a lot of work. You see here, he's saying he's not claiming commercial rights. But read this part here. After the year, it would be possible for the buyer to continue to print that file for payment, but the original creator would not be able to sell the model file anymore. He's literally claiming ownership of the file. He thinks that he owns the STL that is output from his program because his program made it. He doesn't. The STL file does not belong to him. And then look at here. Digital files, but not limited to STL and 3MF files listed for sale before the expiration of the annual period can continue to be sold. He doesn't have the right to determine that. Either it's a commercial license or it's not. Either I'm allowed to sell or I'm not. Once I'm allowed to sell, those are my rights, not his. Files created before expiration, not listed for sale after, are not allowed. He's claiming commercial rights. Because it doesn't matter when the file was created. If my license was valid when I created the file, I can hold that file in a drawer for 20 years after my license expires and then begin selling that file because I was lawfully licensed when I created it. But he's claiming different. He's claiming that, well, if it's already for sale, it's okay for you selling it. But if you haven't started selling it yet, you're not allowed to sell it. He's claiming ownership of the file. He's saying that the file belongs to him, and he's granting you privileges to sell that file. Now his wording starts to make more sense, why he thinks he's allowed to word it like that. And here's more places where he thinks he owns your work. Model files which are imported as a CL in HueForge but wholly generated outside the software have no encumbrance of any kind on saleability in any form. If any part of the model has been generated in HueForge, this exception does not apply. No, that's not how rights work. He is not allowed to claim ownership of my intellectual property just because I own my intellectual property through his software. He can't do that. See here? This is to say, if you have created an STL file of HueForge either by hand or by any other method, importing this file only for the purpose of coloring it, it does not fall under any commercial restrictions because the model file was not a product of HueForge. He thinks that the model files his software generates belong to him, and they don't. He cannot claim ownership or intellectual property in a contract. Where's my compensation for my intellectual property? Without some equal trade of value, that contract is not legal. It's not valid. He's not allowed to just take something. He can buy something. He can say, I will give you compensation if you give me usage rights or commercial rights to something you import, but he can't just take it. That's called theft. And you can't make theft legal by putting it in a contract. He thinks this multi-tier thing does anything. It doesn't. The tiers don't matter. The tiers aren't a problem. The problem is him incorrectly thinking that he owns the output of his software. He owns his software. He owns the algorithm in his software. He does not own the output. That would be like Van Gogh buying a Stanley paintbrush. Stanley later coming back and saying, oh yeah, we own Van Gogh's works because he used a Stanley paintbrush to paint it. You're not allowed to do that. It's illegal. And that's exactly what his license terms state. Here's a direct copy right out of the license terms. Now, keep in mind, this verbiage is normal in software contract licenses. This is normal. When it's applied to his property, when it's applied to what he owns, the software. So, licensor hereby grants licensee supplementary non-exclusive non-transferable license to use the software. Yes, he can do that. But that's not what this says. Licensor hereby grants. He is giving me an additional supplementary non-exclusive non-transferable license to sell tangible goods produced using software and to sell digital goods using the software. These two sections here are illegal. They're in violation of United States law, namely larceny. He's stealing. He's taking rights that don't belong to him. He does not own the output of the software. Just like Stanley does not own the output of their paintbrush. Just like, Creality does not own the output of their printers. There is no contract law that is legal that would allow them to simply take ownership of the output of their hardware or their software. This is illegal. He's not allowed to steal your intellectual property and then grant you a limited license back. He's not allowed to do that. Why is he allowed to limit your use of the software? Because he owns the software. Why is he allowed to prevent you from setting up a commercial kiosk to let other people use the software? Because he owns the software. He does not own this picture. I'm holding up a chips can. He does not own, the photograph that I import into his software is not his property. And when I output an STL from the software, that is also not his property. His license cannot claim ownership of what he doesn't own. There is no workaround in contract law that allows him to claim ownership, to steal, literally, to take, without permission, something that he does not own. He can offer to buy it, but he can't just take it. And these license terms says he can. I mean, here's a perfect example. Where is it? Did you see where, oh, come on. Subscriptions only work because the court bastardized property law by permitting licenses. Licenses are unconstitutional, in my opinion. They're illegal. Not licenses. Licenses aren't illegal. The idea that when you buy software, you're not actually buying software, you're only buying a license. To me, that's illegal. That's a violation of basic property rights. I don't know why I can't see it on here. But Joel Telling posted his 3DPN robot on, done up with HueForge. And, that 3DPN robot was not designed by, that was not designed by Joel Telling. That was designed by somebody else. They gave it to Joel Telling, but it was designed by somebody else. But if, for example, if Ethan, who designed a logo for my YouTube channel, and you made a HueForge painting of that logo, and you sold that logo to me, you're violating this contract. You're not allowed to sell it to me. It's illegal, according to this contract. Even if you were to give it to me for free, it's illegal. You're breaking the contract. Because it says here that it's the professional light here. Oh my God, this is so slow. What, kitty? Michelle still hasn't fed you? It's an hour and a half after your feeding time and you're hungry? Because that cruel, inhuman creature has starved you? She's a mean one, isn't she? Here we go. Well, come out and feed them. Right here. Let's see here. Non-transferable. He is saying that I can create and sell stuff, but I cannot transfer the right to sell that stuff to you. So if you create a logo, or if I create a logo and I sell that logo to you, I'm in violation of these license terms, because it says these commercial rights for tangible or digital goods are non-transferable, which means I can't transfer to you the right to sell that logo that I created and designed for you, that I can't transfer that to you. And it's also lifetime of the buyer, which means if I were to keel over dead tomorrow, even if he took out the non-transferable part, if I were to keel over dead tomorrow, your right to sell the logo that I designed and sold you evaporates. It's gone. You're not allowed to sell the logo anymore. I'm still alive. What? God damn it. The mess is falling. Pissing me off. And he's simply not allowed to do that. He really thinks that he owns the STL file that his software generates. He really thinks he owns that it belongs to him. It doesn't. You can give up your copyright in a contract because it's not a right, it's a privilege. It's a privilege that we, society, grant to you in order to encourage the creation of more works. You can't give up your rights. You can't give up your... You can't be... Okay. You can't be compelled to give up your rights. A software license, if you think this is acceptable, it's also perfectly acceptable for him to say that use of the software grants me access to your bank account and all the money in it. You can give up your rights, right? Would that be legal? If you create a STL file with this software, I own your car now. Is that legal? Non-compete contracts are largely illegal. They've been overturned. And again, you're talking apples and oranges here. You can buy something with contract law. You can't take something with contract law. He's not buying my work, my intellectual property, via this license. He's taking it. If he were to say that use of this software means he gains limited commercial rights to the software, and in compensation, exactly, your usage of without consideration. There's no consideration here. He's just taking it. Well, you get access to the software. No, that's what the software license is for. You paid money for that consideration. You paid $175, you get the software. Okay? This is a separate issue. There's no consideration for taking my property. The term has to be reasonable. It has to be something that a reasonable person would find acceptable, and no reasonable person would find this acceptable. The only reason people find this acceptable is because they're ignorant. And I don't mean that. I hate the fact that ignorant has become a four-letter word. That's not what the fucking word means. Ignorant means you don't know. That's all it means. It just means you're unaware of, you don't know. When people say ignorant as a derogatory term, what they really mean is willful ignorance. And that is a derogatory term. But us lazy citizens have shortened that to just ignorant. And so now there's no way to call somebody ignorant without insulting them. Well, this is just pure, simple ignorance. People do not understand what these words are saying. If they did understand what these words were saying, they wouldn't accept them. And it also doesn't matter. He can't grant to you what he doesn't own. Again, put in your contract that you own the White House. Put in your contract that you own my car. You can't do that. It's illegal. You can't take something via contract. Well, then how do you sell a car? Because you're buying it. the car in exchange for cash. You're buying the car. He's not buying my work. He's taking it. That's the difference. And also, it has to be equitable on both sides. Well, first of all, you're on the wrong path, Ethan. This is what makes me think that you don't understand what these words are saying either. You're on the wrong path. Apples and oranges. We're not talking about the software. These license terms here do not reference the software. These license terms are talking about my intellectual property, not the software. So it doesn't matter. He can have a free version. He can have 10 different tiers at 10 different prices. None of that matters because that's not what we're talking about. He can have as many tiers as he wants. He can have as many different prices as he wants. He can have as many commercial restrictions as he wants. You know, for different tiers. He can say, well, this one you only have commercial rights for a month. This one you have commercial rights for 6 months. But all of those restrictions deal with use of the software, not the output of the software. He can't control how much I sell for, who I sell to, how I sell, or how long I sell, because that doesn't involve his software. His license can only govern use of his software. Once the software is used, his authority ends, and he has no further authority beyond that. The license has to be limited to what it is you're selling in exchange for consideration. He's selling a license to the software. That's a whole nother subject, Salty Scorpion. That's a whole nother subject. But I'm starting to understand where he's coming from. He thinks he's wrong, but he thinks that he owns the STL file created with his software. He thinks that the output of his software is his property. He can't actually limit the things you make, but he can say, well, that was illegal. You use software commercially, therefore your privilege to use the software is now revoked. Okay. So this part of the license agreement is a commercial rights agreement, which he doesn't even have the authority to make. It's this entire addendum is unenforceable because it's not dealing with the software. It's and the reason he's doing this is because and based on my reading of this page, let me give you guys a link to this. I'm starting to understand where he's coming with this now. So based on my reading of this, he thinks he owns the output of the software. He thinks that the STL file created is his intellectual property, which is why he makes this ridiculous, convoluted statement here, because he doesn't understand what he's saying. Just read this part right here. Read these 2 paragraphs on your screen right here. If I can make them bigger for you. There we go. Read that. Okay? Now, that is an internal conflict. He doesn't realize that he's contradicting himself when he makes this statement. He's not making a professional license for the software. This is not a professional license for the software. This is the only thing he has a right to make. This is a professional license for the files created with the software. He thinks he owns the files. Google has become absolutely useless as a search engine unless you're searching for something that is a current affair. If you're searching for anything that's not a current affair, Google is now useless. So if anybody can help me on this, I swear that this actually went to court. I could be wrong. Maybe I thought it was either Microsoft or Adobe. I thought it was either Microsoft or Adobe. It could have been another company where they tried to claim that they owned the output of the software, that they owned the works created with the software or had some ownership rights in it. I thought it was either Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop. I couldn't remember which. It might have been another program. But every time I try to search for Google, all I can find is the Oracle decision, which doesn't matter, and the AI decision regarding can AI own copyright. None of that matters. This was 20 years before that, but I can't find it anywhere. I am almost certain this went to court. I remember reading the court justification on this. Yeah, I know. But there was a case where the software creator tried to claim some level of ownership of the works created with their software. No, it was either Word or it was like a doc file or something like that. It was they tried to say because our software created it, we own it. And the court said no, you can only govern the use of your software. You don't own the works created, the intellectual property of other people created with the software. Now, the court did carve out an exception. This is why I'm almost certain I remember it being a court case. The court carved out an exception where if creative control was not in the hands of the user. So, for example, if you made an art generator where you just had a button and you click the button and the program made random art that you could then use like on your website or something like that. The software designer could claim ownership of that because the user didn't actually create anything. All they did was click a button. Okay, they had no editorial control. They had no creative control. And so they didn't actually make anything. That was the exception the court case carved out. But when Stephen King types out a novel in Microsoft Word, Microsoft does not own his novel. Microsoft has no control over that novel, no control over how he can commercialize it, sell it, license it, nothing, because they don't own it. Your license terms can only license what you own, the software. But HughForge is claiming ownership of the creative works made with his software. And this wording right here on the screen makes it very clear that he thinks he owns the output of the software. He thinks that the STL, the file that the software makes, belongs to him. And it doesn't. And your contract can't take something from someone. And the only way he could own commercial control over that Naruto vs. Slater. Now that's a copyright infringement case. That's probably come up several times. Yeah, I remember this case where he gave a camera to a monkey. But no. I'm talking about a software company like Microsoft or Adobe or something like that claiming that they own the work you create with their software because you created it with their software. So it was before this case. Yeah, see, this is a new case. It's 2018. I'm talking late 90s, early 2000s. I'm talking 20 years before this case. This was old. This was much older than this. This here is what I call current news. Yeah, this is all brand new. This is like the AIs. No, what I'm talking about is much older. It was where I thought it was. I keep telling you I think I could be wrong because I might be. It's amazing how memory will correct itself afterwards. But I thought it was Microsoft. I thought it was either Microsoft or Google. I thought doc files, the DOC file that Microsoft output. I thought that was part of the case. But I've been searching like crazy and I can't find a damn thing. And it's not that I can't find a thing. It's Google will only give me results related to Oracle. Even when I put in minus Oracle, I don't want anything related to Oracle. It still just shows me Oracle cases. Google is useless. Current news, Google is useless. I wish I could find that. I got to keep looking. I don't even know how. I mean, I'll try DuckDuckGo or something like that and see if it finds it. But I thought I even remembered it being on the news, like TV, like on the news. But I could be wrong about that. It could just be because of how old it was. But it was definitely. I'm almost certain it was at least 20 years ago, like late 90s, early 2000s. I just remember it being much older. But HueForge cannot take from you with the license agreement, and this is a taking. Now you say, well, he's not saying he's taking it, but he's granting you a limited license. The only way he can grant you a limited license is if it's his property. Therefore, he is claiming to own it. He doesn't have to say, I claim to own the output from my software. He doesn't have to say that. This says he's saying that. And people don't understand this. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be so harsh because it drove me nuts that Telling doesn't understand this. That he doesn't get. And I got to remember, he's not a genius. He's not like some godlike 3D printing entity. He just, like me, he got lucky in the early, except he was able to run with it and I failed. But he just got lucky, entered early, was able to monetize his YouTube content. But beyond that, he's just a regular person. And so he's going to have the same, lack of knowledge that a regular person would have. It's the same concept of why we think our political figures are these powerful, intelligent people, and then I go to my local town hall meeting and I realize these guys are morons. They're just like anybody else. But because they're in a position of power, we have a false perception of their capabilities. But I'm surprised that no one like Fix You My Dude or Chaos Core Tech or one of the other big content creators. I'm surprised none of them understand what this says because their livelihood depends on it. So I'm surprised that none of them have realized these license terms are this bad. I think it's, ooh, new toy, shiny, pretty, and they're just ignoring it, figuring, well, he can't be an evil person. I don't think he's an evil person. I think he has, I think he misunderstands what his limitations are legally. That, this wording that he has here clearly indicates that he thinks he owns the files by the software. You notice how he tries to separate stuff put for sale before they expired versus stuff put for sale after expired. He considers the point at which this license comes into effect is not the creation of the file, but when you decide to commercially use the file. This is what I mean by him claiming commercial rights over your creations. This right here is him literally claiming he is the owner of the commercial rights to your files, not you. Because otherwise, he would not be able to say, oh, while you have the license, you can commercially sell, but afterwards, if you haven't already put it for sale, you're not allowed to. And that's exactly what he's saying. He is saying that he has the right to determine when it can and can't be commercially sold because he owns it. And I think he's going to be willing to hear constructive alterations, because the only valid alteration is him recognizing he does not own the output of the software. And I don't think he's going to do that. I think he thinks that's where his control is. I think he thinks that's where his money is, in owning the output of the file. Of course it does. You steal the intellectual property rights of everybody who uses your software. Of course that gives you a lot of power. Of course there's money to be made taking the work of others and profiting from it. I mean, who would have thought? It's an idea as old time itself. I don't think he fully comprehends what he's saying. Oh, man. The problem is I don't want to be antagonistic. I don't want to fight him. I don't argue with him, because I think he's making a wonderful piece of software. He's selling it for a fantastic price. $175 for fleshed out software that does what he's doing is not a bad price. I mean, it's a horrible price for what it is now, but the assumption is that he's going to continue updating it and fleshing it out and making it clean. But, and also the fact that I get $175 in Polymaker, hell yeah, I would. But I would never put a photograph of mine through his software, because I am not going to allow him to steal commercial rights to my intellectual property. We've lost enough rights over our property. We're going to give up even more rights to our property? We can't even sell our own works anymore? I can't even profit from my own creations without his permission now? At least he appears to have gotten rid of that bullshit that says that I have to post a permit to sell my works. What a crock. Yeah, in his original terms, you had to get approval from him. You had to get his approval to sell your creative works. And then you had to get issued a permit, a revocable limited rights permit that you would have to post anywhere you sold your works. Hell no! A what? I don't understand what that means. A trading community member overnight became a retailer and should expect concerns from a customer viewpoint. Oh, you mean because he overnight started selling software? Today we're talking about popsicle jewelry, rockets, and HueForge. Not for too long, probably, though. The computer is broken. I think the cooling fan has failed and it's overheating and it's throttling down. And so when I'm showing you a screen like this, it looks fine. But as soon as I try to show you a video, it runs at like 3 frames per second. So that it's driving some people crazy. So I've been sticking to that's something that concerns me, is that his first reply, hey DeWitt, his first reply to me on Twitter was to basically call me a troll. Like, what the F, dude? What did I do to you? Let me see if I can find it. See here, Joel Telling says, I'm confused. I don't see HueForge claiming commercial ownership of any creations anywhere. That's exactly what this is. This is a claim of commercial ownership. I think the mistake was showing the come on, where is it? You know where I made a copy of it in case he deleted it. There it is. So this is why I'm hoping this is a simple misunderstanding on his part. Because a lot of this this is the only two comments he made to me, and it makes no sense whatsoever. It seems like if I only offered a professional license, you wouldn't be upset. I don't give a fuck what you offer. I don't care what license you offer. If you claim to steal my intellectual property right and then grant me limited rights back to my own property, we have a problem. It doesn't matter whether it's a personal license, a commercial license, or a limited commercial license. You can't limit my commercial rights with a limited commercial license. You can only limit my use of the software. But since I offer it specifically to allow more people to be able to afford it, I'm stealing from people? No, you're stealing from people because your license term said you are. You're stealing from people because this right here says you are. This is why you're stealing from people, because this says you are. But see, now I understand a little bit more now. He doesn't see it as stealing because he thinks it's his property. Hey, Darren. HueForge thinks it's his property, so he wouldn't see it as stealing. But yes, he is. I claim no commercial rights. And this is his updated statement, which, by the way, is not part of his license, so it's not valid. But this is his updated way of saying, of addressing the idea that he is taking those commercial rights. Files created before expiration but not listed for sale until after are not allowed. You're literally claiming my commercial rights. It's right. You're literally claiming my commercial rights. But again, he thinks they're his rights because he thinks the files belong to him. So I think that's what the mistake is. Basically, because I don't start my pricing at $80 a year, you're mad at me. This is where he's calling me a troll. Okay, I don't give a shit. This is where he's not. This is what concerns me because he's straight up not paying attention to what I said. I said straight up $175 was a bargain for the software. $5 is a bargain for what that software does. I don't care if you offered it for $5. Or if you offered it for $5,000. You don't own the files. 5 cents, $5, $500, $5,000, $5 million. You don't own the files. The STL files created with HueForge belong to the person who created the file, not to HueForge. That's my concern. Shiny, pretty toy, and people aren't realizing what it says. It's also complicated. I mean, Ethan's is having a valid discussion with me here, and it took me over an hour to explain this to him. That's because this is not language we normally have to deal with. And when we do have to deal with this language, it usually makes sense. So, for example, it's going to take a while, but it's worth showing you because it does make sense. Okay, it's not there. It's down lower. He goes on and on about tiers, and he doesn't realize I don't care about the tiers. The tiers don't matter. There it is. And like I said, I don't think he's malicious. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's woefully misinformed about what his rights are and what he owns. So, first, we have to understand what the word grant means. If you were to visit my house, you're not allowed. I own my house. You're not allowed to visit my house, not without my permission. I can revoke that permission because I grant you limited access to my house to visit me. If you do something I don't like, I can tell you to get lost. I can tell you to leave. This is another subject matter that people are woefully ignorant about. Property owners have no rights over you. The only right a property owner has is the right of trespass. We're not talking about my rights to use my property. We're talking about my rights governing you do on my property. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you not to do. I can, but I can't compel. When I say I can't do something, I mean compel. I can ask you anything I want. I can ask you to only visit my property in pink polka dot dresses. I can't compel you, although that gets interesting. Property law is a very weird thing, but we're going to ignore that for now. Is my microphone not working? Yeah, it's working. Okay. But that's a totally separate subject. Basically, my only right over you is the right of trespass. I can tell you, I permit you to be here, or you're not permitted to be here. That's it. I cannot compel you not to take pictures. I cannot take the pictures from you. I cannot make you delete the pictures. I cannot stop you from yelling and screaming. I cannot stop you from saying things I don't like you saying. No, renting the property is not a valid example of what I'm talking about because we're talking about visitor and owner. Okay? Renting is a form of ownership. That's a completely separate subject altogether with completely separate rules, completely laws. So that's not a valid analogy in this discussion. Remember, when you rent, you don't own. You don't own it. You're not there. But when you rent it, you are purchasing the right to be there. And because you are purchasing the right to be there, I can't simply revoke that right just because, okay? It's going to be limited by the contract we both agreed to, okay? I'm talking about you just visiting. Well, the only reason I have the right to trespass you is because I own the property. Now, can I grant you access to the White House? Can I grant Darren access to Salty Scorpion's house? Of course not. Why? Why am I not allowed to create a contract granting Darren access to Salty Scorpion's house? Because I don't own Salty Scorpion's house. I can't grant that which I do not own. There's no such thing as any contract law that allows that. It's not possible. The contract has to be lawful. Whatever is in the contract has to be lawful. You can't make a contract that says, I have the right to murder you. That is illegal. You're not allowed to do that. You can't make a contract that violates the law. So the contract has to be within the scope of the law. Now, licensor means the person who's controlling the contract. That's the owner. So in the trespassing situation, I would be the licensor. Licensee is, well, in this case, a renter. Would be the person who is entering into a contract to purchase a license for the software. I don't agree with that, but that's the way current U.S. law is. Licensor grants licensee a non-exclusive, non-transferable license, keywords here, to use the software, subject to the terms and conditions of this agreement. This license is limited to personal use only and does not include the right to reverse engineer, copy, distribute, sublicense, or sell the software. Personal use license extends to household members not engaged in commerce using the software and is not limited to one computer but to any number of computers under one roof. Does he have that right? Yes. Why? Where do rights come from? Rights are derived from property. That's why the government keeps trying to take property from us, because if you don't own property, you don't have rights. Okay? Rights are derived from property. Why do I have the right to trespass you and tell you to leave my property? Because I own it. I don't actually, but that's another subject matter. Why do I not have the right to grant Darren access to Salty Scorpion's house? It's in a contract. This is contract law, right? I can't grant rights or privileges to things I don't own. Licensor owns the HueForge software. Therefore, it is perfectly valid for licensor to grant you a non-exclusive, non-transferable license to use the software subject to the terms and conditions of the agreement, because he owns the software. Okay? Now, this is not a software license. This is not a software license. This does not reference the software. This is a commercial license regarding creations of the software, regarding the STL file in digital or tangible form, meaning as an STL file or as a printed STL file. This regards the creations from the software. Licensor hereby grants licensee. Licensor, in this case, should be Chris Taylor, and licensee should be HueForge. Because now we're not talking about the software. Now we're talking about something that belongs to me. The creation from the software. But that's not what this says. In this instance, licensor is HueForge. Licensee is still me. He is saying that HueForge hereby grants Chris Taylor an additional, no, supplementary, no, non-exclusive, no, non-transferable license, no, to sell tangible goods produced using the software. He does not have that right. He cannot put that into a contract. It's illegal. It's called larceny. It's theft. It's a taking, an awful taking. He does not own the creations from his software. The artist does. The creator does. So he can't grant me rights I already have, because they're not his to grant. This is like him saying, Darren, I grant you access to Salty Scorpion's house. I can't do that because I don't own Salty Scorpion's house. He can't do this because he doesn't own the STL file that comes out of his software.
licensee is granted the right to sell tangible goods produced using his software for the lifetime of the buyer. No, they're not his rights to grant. He can determine whether or not I can use the software commercially or not use the software commercially. Once I can use the software commercially, as long as the file generated was created within the terms of the license agreement, at that point, his license is terminated. He no longer owns it. The moment I click save in HueForge, this license ceases to exist because he no longer has any rights to it, as long as my use before I hit save was lawful. So if I intended to sell commercially, I need a commercial license. But that's not a license to sell commercially. That's a license to use the software commercially. Licensors granted the right to sell model. Again, he doesn't have a say. His license terminates the moment I click save. I don't want people pirating his software. I want him to recognize the limitations of his authority and power and to not steal people's intellectual property from them and to steal their commercial rights from them, which is exactly what he's doing. Now, I think he legitimately doesn't think he's stealing people's IP and stealing people's commercial rights because I think he thinks they're his rights. That's what stealing is. I think your house is mine, so I'm taking it. That's called theft. You can't grant me the right to sell model files because they're my files. I own the model files. It doesn't matter if they're produced using your software, just like it doesn't matter if my carving was produced using my stand chisel. Oh, and let's not forget, he has the right to terminate your license anytime he pleases, for any reason or no reason at all. You might be able to, he has that right for the software, which is why I disagree with the idea of a license. But you don't understand, Darren. The problem is, if enough software licenses are created with terms like this in them, it'll eventually become precedent. And while it is illegal, the courts don't seem to have a problem enforcing illegal laws. I mean, the Patriot Act is unconstitutional, but it's enforced and it's been renewed twice. I mean, our copyright and patent law is unconstitutional, yet it's being enforced. I mean, exactly. In theory, he could do that. He's not likely to, but the point is, in theory, he could. Now, if Microsoft revoked my license to Microsoft Word, okay, I can't use Word anymore legally. But because he is attempting to claim that he owns the output of the software, STL files created with the software, your commercial license to everything you already created while you were lawfully using the software also evaporates when he terminates the license. So if I design a DeWitt logo in HueForge, which would be pointless, it's a two-color logo, but if I design a DeWitt logo in HueForge today with a license that I bought from HueForge, and I give that to you, well, first of all, it's illegal for me to give that to you. I am not allowed to give DeWitt for free or for a DeWitt logo, because he's going to use that logo commercially, and this license says I can't transfer. So I'm not allowed to do works for hire with HueForge. I'm not allowed to design a HueForge logo for any commercial entity because that would be transferring the commercial license, and the license terms say non-transferable. What is Creative Cloud? Oh, that's something you paid for? No, they can't do that. Files you created while you had the subscription are your property. They can't take them back. We tell him we don't want to use his software until he corrects the license. We tell him we want him to recognize that he does not own the output from the software and to adjust his license accordingly. Basically, he needs to completely delete the commercial addendum altogether. The entire commercial addendum needs to be deleted. No part of the commercial addendum is valid. It is a completely illegal contract from start to finish. It does not govern the use of software. It governs your access to your commercial property, which he doesn't have a right to license. So he needs to delete the commercial addendum altogether. Add a line to the personal license that simply says, if you pay for the commercial license, you're allowed to use the software commercially. Now, he is allowed to control your commercial usage to a limited extent regarding the software. So, for example, he can say, you can't break the law using my software. That would be a violation of this agreement. That still would not affect your ability to sell the files you create. That would only affect your continued lawful use of the software. So he could, for example, say, you can't tarnish my name with this software. Although I don't know if that would be legal. That might violate the First Amendment. But let's say he can. I don't know if he can or not. I'm getting into areas that I am ignorant of. But let's say for a moment he can create a line item that says, you can't use my software to cause me harm, to libel or defame me. Well, that's no different than saying you can't use the software criminally, because libel and defamation are crimes. So he says you can't use the software illegally. Let's say I create a race nasty defamation image that impugns HueForge. He still can't stop me from selling it. He still can't stop me from having commercial access to it. He can void my license to use his software, and he could probably take me to court for defamation, but he still can't control what I do with the file I create because he doesn't own it. It's not his. Stanley might not like me making a racist Nazi statue with their chisel, but they also legally can't stop me. It is amazing. That's what's driving me crazy. The software is so good. The idea is so good. The concept is so good. I love what he's doing. But he has a huge chip on his shoulder where he thinks that he can control the output of the software, and he's not able to do that. I wish there was a better way to explain that. I mean, even people I consider intelligent don't understand me because they don't realize that contract law is something we don't teach. And that's why I personally think most contracts are illegal, because contracts require a willing, knowing, agreed upon meeting of the minds. And if one person is not capable of actually understanding what the contract says, there is no meeting of the minds. Well, the problem is he could void my license, and then I could not create any more creations without breaking the law. The problem is that would have to take someone willing to throw away $175. I don't have $175 to throw away. That's the problem. People up with it. Yeah, like I said, Darren, I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's evil. He is stealing people's intellectual property. He is taking ownership of people's commercial rights. even though he explicitly says he's not. I claim no commercial rights over your output from HueForge. And then he says, but like Fusion 360, in order to offer more people the chance to use HueForge, I add restrictions to that usage. You're not allowed to add restrictions to that usage. You're not allowed to. You're only allowed to restrict usage of the software. As many as you want. I don't recognize any license term that limits how many computers I can put software on. I consider that to be unlawful. I consider that to be fundamentally unconstitutional and illegal. It's an unlawful taking because my computer didn't buy the software. I did. I bought the software, not the computer. You're not granting a license to my computer. You're granting a license to me. And I will use it on as many goddamn computers as I want. Now, if you're saying multiple users have to pay for a different license, yes, because you're making a license with me, with the other user. And this is what makes me think partially that he's not a bad person. He graciously allows anybody in the household to use the software. And he doesn't have to. He can limit that. He can say, "Oh, yeah, like I could buy the software and I could let Michelle use it and play around with it." And his license allows that, which is gracious of him because he could say only me. He is allowed to do that, and I have no problem with that. It's annoying, it's stupid, but I'm okay with that. I claim no commercial rights. Well, neither does Fusion 360. Fusion 360 does not, any part of their license do they claim commercial rights over your output. They claim whether you use it commercially or not. That's it. That's the only claim Fusion 360 makes. Gentlemen, this is commercial software. You're going to be making money from it. You have to buy the software from us. By the way, we have this free version available for hobbyists. Now, our intent is to make money. So obviously, if you get the free version, you can't use it commercially. There's nothing wrong with that. And that is nothing like what he's doing. His addendum does not control commercial usage of the software. It controls my commercial rights to the output of the software. Well, acting it on 2 at a time is the same thing as saying you can only have it on 2. There's no difference. There's tangibly no difference. But see, that's the problem, though. He really thinks he owns the output of the software. He thinks that's where his money and control are. Of course, it's always very profitable when you can take other people's work. That's always profitable when you're taking the work of others. You put nothing in, and you get to take their profits. But he made the software. But he's not controlling the software. He's controlling the output. This controls the software. This controls the tangible and digital goods made with the software. If he wants those rights, he's going to have to pay me for it. And it's going to cost him a lot of money. I'll start at $1,000 per file. And I think that's fair. To hand over basically all of my commercial rights to him? Oh, no, I haven't. Let me open it. I got it right here. Although, I'm going to wait till next week to open it because the video is so bad, it's like 8 frames per second. I got it sitting right there. I haven't yet. We're going to do that next week. We're going to open it. Come hell or high water, next week we are going to build the LDO knack design linear rail upgrade for the Ender 3, and we are going to open DeWitt's box. I'm pointing and you guys can't see me. We're going to open DeWitt's box. I got to take apart this computer and find out what's wrong with it. Even showing you guys this static screen, I'm only getting 6 frames per second. Oh, 12 frames per second. Oh, now it's 2.69 frames per second. Oh my god. I like Pandora's box. I'm crazy, so I'm okay if it kills the world. World, that's your problem. I'm gonna have fun. Look at this additional tangible goods license, additional model files license. He thinks he owns the tangible goods and the model files. He thinks because it was derived from his software that he owns it. In which case, he would not consider granting me rights to my own rights to be theft or taking of my commercial rights. He thinks he legitimately owns it. He can't patent it. It's already in the public domain. He might be able to patent his algorithm because that's not public, because that's in source code. But the concept, he can't patent it. The thing is, though, I want him to succeed. I want him to be successful. I want him to continue improving the software. I want him to, and he's perfect. Like, for example, the way he's doing his license agreement, his personal one, is perfectly valid to me. You know, you can pay, what's the difference between the $80 license and the $175 license? Neither one of them comes with lifetime upgrades to the software. They're both limited to 1 year of updates. I think the 175, you get 2 years of updates. Neither one of them gives you lifetime updates to the software. So what's the difference between the $80 license and the $175 license? He thinks he owns your intellectual property right, and he thinks he owns the commercial rights to the files created with the software. And that's what you're paying for with the $175 license. You're paying for lifetime access to your own intellectual property. That's people like Chaos Cortec, people like Polymaker, people like, what are some of the other big name creators out there who are using UForge? Can I do a search for UForge? It's an @ tag. Is it an @ tag or a hashtag? I think you do a hashtag. Is it hashtag HUEFORGE? So is Ian Smalley aware that HueForge thinks they own this? Is the Joy of Printing aware that HueForge thinks they own this? Is Ajax aware HueForge thinks they own this? What about Joy of 3D Printing? Now, Joy of 3D Printing doesn't own this. Who is it? What the fuck is the name of the company that owns Star Wars? I forgot it. Begins with a T? What the hell is the name of the studio that owns Star Wars? I can't remember the name. I know they sold it off to somebody else, not before Disney. God damn it, I can't remember the name. It drives me crazy. LucasArts. Is LucasArts aware that HueForge is claiming to own the intellectual property rights and commercial rights to this? Well, no, that's just it, though. He's not selling you an annual license to the software. He's selling you a license for your own Lucasfilms. That's it. He's selling you a license to your commercial rights to your creations. That's the upsell for the $175. The upsell is that he thinks he can sell you the tangible and digital rights to your own creations. That's what he's selling you for $175. He thinks the software is worth $80. And he's saying, well, if you want lifetime commercial rights to your own creations, you got to pay me $175. What the fuck? Wow. Yeah, just let him try that with Disney. They'll spank him back into the microbial age. He'll be the Paramecium squad by the time Disney's done with him. Oh my God. Now that's kind of cool. If that actually works as a QR code? Does that actually work as a QR code? That's fucking genius if it does. Oh, it work. Maybe I gotta load the bigger version, or maybe the camera's dirty. Why is it coming out so bright? I think it's because it's coming too bright. I'm really hoping that works, because that's really freaking cool if that works. Where is my QR code scanner? God damn it, would you stop it? Barcode scanner. Yeah. I don't care. It's not working. Well, that's not in the license agreement, so it's not enforceable. Too bad. I wish that worked. If that worked as a QR code, that'd be freaking amazing. You know, QR codes could actually be art. So, David, are you aware that HueForge owns the commercial rights to the painting of your son? Okay. Um, Geert Bevan, are you aware that HueForge thinks that they own this forest picture of yours? I mean, yeah, post to his thing. Well, I am yelling, so he can just deal with it. He called me a troll first. Yeah, he has a lot of caps in his EULA. What? I still use Dreamweaver. Might as well do some basic spell checking. Yeah, I suspect so. So I'm going to copy this since there's a good chance he's going to delete it. I don't even want to believe it's ego, because if it's, that's, to me, ego is the same as malice in this context. I am. I just did, actually. um, look how slow it is. Let's see if I had a count to post it. I'll use my real name. I got to replace fan. It's absolutely silent. I don't hear a noise coming from it. I usually hear the fan at speed based on load. It says no. The answer is no. Details below. And then the details below proceed to say the answer is yes. It's just like, how does he not understand this? Yeah. Does Forge own your files? No. The answer is no. Details below. Proceed to read down below. I own your files. You can't make this up. But I think it stems from the fact that he's saying he doesn't own your files because he doesn't think you ever own the file. He thinks the file is owned by him. I hope he understands that. I hope he reads it. One more thing. I hope he reads it. We'll see. Oh, man. What are you going to do? I want to support these guys, but, when you go down the dark side, I can't support you. I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, buy the software and get the $175 in free filament and then just not use the software. But that defeats the point. That that doesn't send the correct message. And the correct message is for him to educate himself on what his rights are and are not, and what my rights are and are not, and for him to respect that. Again, I mean, how can you make a post that says, I do not own your files, and then make a post saying, I own your files? I mean, and the only way that makes sense to me, besides him being a shyster and a crook, which I don't think he is, I think he's a decent guy. He's just trying to make some really cool freaking software. I think he honestly thinks he owns the STL file the software outputs. I think he thinks that because he made the software, that he owns the output and has the right to control it. He doesn't. That's like Ford selling you a car and saying, oh, you can't use it commercially. You can't do that. That's not how that works. They could void your warranty because they could say the warranty is for personal use only. That's fine. But they can't control the use of your car. They can't make you pay them dividends to own the car. They can't make you pay a fee to use the car commercially. They can't make you put an emblem on your windshield that says, permit from Ford to use car commercially. They can't do that because they don't own it. Now, the software, they can do a limited amount of that stuff because the courts have incorrectly, and I would say unconstitutionally, I would call it an unlawful takings. They have incorrectly determined that you're not buying the software, you're buying the license, which I disagree with. And I will ignore till the day I die. If that gets me in prison, I don't give a fuck. But they absolutely do not own the output of the software. HueForge does not own the STL created with the software. You do. Simplify 3D tried this same bullshit. I didn't know until afterwards. Years later, actually. I think it's actually part of the license terms that I'm not supposed to be able to share G-code with you guys. Fuck you. The G-code belongs to me. It doesn't belong to Simplify 3D. The G-code's my creation. It's my work. It's my intellectual property. What about the factory file that's custom to Simplify 3D? They don't own that either. Just because you wrap my content in a container doesn't change the fact that it's my intellectual property. I own it. Simplify 3D does not own the factory file. Simplify 3D does not own the G-code. Simplify 3D does not own the STL or the OBJ file. They only own the software. Oh, man. What are you going to do? All right, guys. I'm going to call off. I got to take this thing apart and find out what the hell's wrong with it. But I hope he realizes what he's doing is wrong. I hope he changes it because I'd like to support him. Even though I probably will never sell anything I make from the software. It's not the point. I'm not handing over the rights to my IP to him just to use his software. That's just not how it's supposed to work. And I hope he recognizes that. I hope other people start to recognize that. I hope these other artists that are creating content recognize how bad, intentionally or not, I hope they recognize how bad these license terms are. That these license terms are claiming ownership of their property. I'm trying to see if there's any big name people. Using HueForge for a 3-color image doesn't make any sense, buddy. It defeats the point of the software. Same with this. This doesn't require HueForge to use. There is 1, 2, 3 colors in this image. I can make this in minutes. That's why I consider most licenses to be invalid, to be illegal. Because there's no way the vast majority of the population understands what that license is, even if they sit there and read it. All right, Meme D went, run with it. I love it. Passive aggressive malicious compliance. Yes, I love it. This doesn't require HueForge, so I don't know why he put this in HueForge. HueForge doesn't do anything to make this. I could take this picture and duplicate this in my slicer. It's literally black, slate blue, white, and gray. Exactly. I'll just save it as 4 separate JPEGs, convert them to SVGs, bring them into Tinkercad, make them solid, and there you go. You're done. Well, the output is gray. I can create that with 4 filaments without using mixing. The whole point of HueForge, the reason HueForge, and it is magical what he's doing. The whole point of HueForge is you need to use luminous filaments. You need to use filaments with a high degree of transparency. Because the whole idea is by using varying numbers of layers of a color, you can create different shades. If I wasn't running at 2 frames per second, I would show you how to do it right now. It'll take me a couple minutes. It's not hard. You can actually see me do it if you look at the when I did the Jurassic Park sign. You just 4 different STL files with 4 different colors. Now this here is shaded. So this here you have varying amounts of color shading. It's not great, but it's there. Now that's what HueForge is supposed to do. And this is mostly a solid color print. You can see there is some shading here on the mountain. A little bit of shading in the sky, but overall this doesn't really have that much shading. They gotta decrease their layer height and increase the number of Now that's pretty good. That's not too bad. That's just multicolor. But the first couple that you saw, the picture of the girl and the coin, that looked freaking 3-dimensional, and to see it was this thick, 2 millimeters thick, it was absolutely incredible because of the shading. The shading gave it the 3-dimensionality. So there's going to be a lot of tinkering to find the right filaments to use that have the right transparency, the right luminance to allow light to pass through it, and also the right printer that can print with a low layer height. I mean, ideally, if your printer's capable of it, I might actually dedicate my my Ender 5, my 0.2 millimeter Ender 5 to this if I ever get the software, if he changes the license, or if somebody else creates an alternative, because the 0.2 millimeter nozzle is not the greatest nozzle for doing this because it's going to take so long, but I can reliably print 0.04 millimeter layers with that. How do I find I guess I can go to printables. But the one thing I can do with the 0.2 millimeter nozzle is print 0.04 layers. And being able to print 0.04 layers is going to allow you to get much more shading control. It's like, do you remember it's actually like going back to the old days with GIFs and using dithering to increase the apparent number of colors, even though you were limited to like 6 colors with a GIF file. So you would use dithering to increase the number of colors. That's what he's doing with the filament. He's using thin layers of light transmissive plastic to allow more shades of a color than actually exist. And the result, when it's done correctly, or I guess correctly is the wrong. Why am I still here? I already said explore models. When done to the full potential of the software and the filament, the result is pretty staggering. Oh my god, this is running so slow. It's not here. That looks like a pretty decent one. I like that. It's an annoying. Jesus, come on. That one looks pretty good. When it stops looking like a 3D print and it starts to look like a painting, you know you got a good one. Oh, come on. I want to show you the original one because the original one really popped. That one's pretty good. That one's damn good. That one's actually not bad. It's the opposite of lithophanes. Lithophanes is when you shine light through something. So when like you hold a negative up in front of your face and you look through the negative with the light to see it, that's a lithophane but done with hardware. So lithophane is using filament to block light to allow you to look through it like a lens and see the image. HueForge is basically doing paintings, but with a 3D printer. One creates a negative, one creates a positive. A very crude way of explaining it. In theory, he could, and I think his software actually does have the option, he could create lithophanes as well with this software. There it is. There's the good one. Right, now we can look through them. So here's the lion. I bet you these print times are pretty long. Now this is done. This is probably done with 2 or 3 colors. But you see all kinds of shades of this amber orange color. Obviously, doesn't have the 10 different shades of this amberous filament, so it's different thicknesses of filament, which allow you to create the different shades. The sunflower is pretty impressive. Oh my god, it's running so slow. I mean, that's impressive. That's 3D printed. This is a black and white. This is a grayscale. So a 3D printer would make this a 2-color or a 3-color image. But by using HueForge, it makes your 3D printer into a grayscale printer, basically. That's how he has all these different shades of gray, by basically mixing them. Well, that's the original image. This is the output. There. Not freaking bad. So I think that's the original image. Yeah, it'll vary. Probably around 1 to 2 millimeters high. And there's the print, which is pretty damn cool. I think that's a copy of the picture. I don't think that's the output. They should be showing the output. That's the output. That's pretty cool. He is starting to create a database of filaments, and they're effective, their luminance and stuff like that. Even Polymaker gets sucked in by this, because obviously they could sell a lot of filament, doing this. People are going to buy filament like crazy to make these things. Look at that. I mean, that looks like a photograph, but it's a 3D print. And of course, the original. I wonder if Steve is the guy's name. It says Steve from HueForge. Look at that. That's a 3D print. And it's flat. It's completely flat. But it's not irrelevant, Ethan's, because he's not trying to control your commercial use of the app. He's trying to control your commercial use of what you make with the app, as if it belongs to him, and he has the right to grant you limited access to your own work. Once you pay for the commercial license, his license terminates the moment you click the save button. His license no longer applies the moment you click save. You're either allowed to use it commercially or you're not, because that's the only thing he controls, the software. He's trying to control the digital and tangible goods you make with the software, and he does not have that right. God, if I can't make you understand, how do I make everybody else understand? This is bad. If after all this time, if after several hours talking about this, you still don't understand, then that's a failure on my part. That's a failure of mine to communicate this problem. Technically, it's irrelevant. He can't enforce this license. But what about the next company and the next company and the next company? But he doesn't have a right to control the commercial usage of the item. He only has a right to control the commercial usage of the software. Because the software is the only thing he owns. He doesn't own stuff you make with it. Either you're allowed to commercially use it, at which point his license ends and he has no more say. You use the software commercially. You paid for the right to use the software commercially. That's it. Finish. Terminated. That's the limit of his ability to control you. He has the right to say you can use it commercially or you can't use it commercially. But that's all he has a right to say. He doesn't have a right to make you put up a permit to sell the files. He doesn't have a right to control who you can sell it to. He doesn't have a right to control your commercial rights and who you can sell them to and transfer them to. He does not have that right because he does not own it. Ethan, this would be like Adobe saying you can use Photoshop to make commercial photographs, but we own the photograph and we own the commercial rights to that photograph, and we have a say in who you sell it to, how you can sell it, what you can charge, etc. Adobe doesn't have that right. Either it's a commercial version, or it's not. Either you're allowed to be here or you're not allowed to be here. That's the limit of your rights, the right of trespass. That's it. And he can control whatever terms he wants in his license, as long as terms are regarding the software. His commercial addendum does not govern use of the software. It governs use of the hardware. It governs use of what you make with it. And he does not have that right because he doesn't own it. But the limit to the damages he can sue you for is the $175 for the software. Because you use the software commercially. That's it, though. He still can't stop you from selling it. He can make you pay the $175 and potentially punitive damages for not having bought the license as punishment for not buying the license. But that's it. But this is something we can't disagree on. Otherwise, you're giving over your intellectual property to the software vendors. This is something that has to be understood. But he's saying he can control how you sell it, who you can sell it to, how much you can sell it for, how long you can for. That's outside the scope of his software. Again, if I use HueForge to make a McDonald's HueForge logo, I'm not allowed to sell that to McDonald's. License terms say I can't do that. Not the license terms for the software, the license terms for my property that he assumes he owns. It says non-transferable, no exceptions. If I pay for his software, and let's say it's rid of the non-transferable limit, I pay, or let's keep the non-transferable limit. I make a HueForge of one of my rocket pictures that I take. Okay, I pay the $80, or I pay the $175. I pay the $175 for a commercial license. I make a picture of one of my rocket photographs that I took to commercially sell, but I don't sell it. It's just sitting on my hard drive, ready for sale when I get around to it. Tomorrow, he wakes up and decides, for whatever reason, to void my license to the software. I can no longer use the software commercially. He is claiming that he owns the file that I already created while the license was still active, and that I now can't sell that file because it wasn't already for sale. He doesn't have that right. When I created the software, I had a commercial license to the software. The commercial rights to the object, to the file, belong to me, not him. He cannot grant me a commercial license to sell items. He cannot grant a commercial license to sell items. He cannot grant a commercial license to sell items because he doesn't own them. He can grant a commercial license to use the software. That's it. I'm allowed to use the software commercially, or I'm not allowed to use the software commercially. What I commercially do with the output from my valid commercial license to use the software is none of his business and not under his control. Because he does not own the commercial license to sell the items. I do. I am the licensor when it comes to selling the items or the files I make with HueForge. I'm the licensor, not the licensee. You download the free version of Fuse 360 and you use the software commercially beyond the financial limits of what the software says you can use, because they do allow you to use commercially for the free version. But let's assume they don't. Let's assume the free version is personal only, non-commercial. And I use the software commercially. And then I make stuff with the software and I sell those things. They cannot go after me for selling made with their software because they don't have that right. What they're going to go after me for is commercial use of their software. No, they're not stored on his cloud, and it wouldn't matter if they were stored on his cloud. The output does not belong to him. Even if he wrapped the STL file in a custom container that he created and invented, the output still belongs to me. His license ends. Well, not the license doesn't end. His license's authority ends the moment you click the save button. The moment you click the save button, you now have two separate licenses. You have, the moment you click the save button, you now have two separate licenses. You have this license, and you have this license. We're going to call this the software. His license governs the software. His license does not govern the output, the hardware. The moment I design a rocket picture in HueForge and click save, you now have two licenses. You have the HueForge license governing use of the software, and you have my license governing use of my creation. Because this creation, all rights reserved, belongs to me unless I create a contract with you granting you privileges over my creation, just like he created a license granting you privileges for his creation, the software. But it's limited to the software. He cannot govern the output. He can only govern the software. It is so critical that people understand this distinction. Ford cannot dictate what you can do with a Ford car. They can only dictate what you do with their IP, their intellectual property rights, and their trademarks. That's it. He does not own the STL file. On his page that I linked, he claims he does. And because he owns the STL file, he thinks the commercial rights are his to grant or deny. They're not. He does not own the output. If Fusion 360 tried to put those terms in their license, they sued. Because they have customers who are, earning millions of dollars using their software. Or even better, if SolidWorks tried to put those terms in their license, they would be sued. Because they're not allowed to. Your license is limited to your property. While the ability for you to put terms in a license is very broad, and you can do a lot with a license to restrict people, you can only restrict their use of your property. In this context, his property is the HueForge software. The error in his thinking is that he thinks Exactly. He can't go after me for selling stuff with his software on a personal license. What he would technically be going after me for court is commercial usage of his software. Now, there has to be a punishment when you break the rules. So the amount of money you earned might be a factor in the punitive damages, punish you. But he's not controlling that. That's a punishing the use of his software. Exactly. Now you say, well, wait a minute, isn't that controlling the output with TurboTax? No. I'm using TurboTax to do other people's taxes and charging them for it. That is using the TurboTax software commercially. I don't own the TurboTax software. TurboTax does, and they have a right to control that. They have a right to say, you can't set up a kiosk and do people's tax with our software. Why do they have that right? Because they own the software. It's their property. But the actual finished tax form is not their property. That belongs to whoever's tax information's on there. Now, of course, we don't sell that output like that, so it's not quite the same thing. But a perfect analogy would be, again, if I were to buy a Stanley paintbrush and I were to make a painting with this paintbrush, and Stanley were to then say, well, our license says that we own the painting and we own the commercial rights to the painting, and we grant you limited, non-transferable commercial rights as long as you pay for our commercial tool. Nobody would accept that. They don't have that right because they don't own the painting. They don't even own the brush, technically, because the brush is physical property. That's why software is so bullshit. Again, Fusion 360 does not claim to own your files or own the commercial output from your files. Legally, yes. Technically, the only thing that expires with your commercial license, if you don't, after the 2 years when you pay the $175, the only thing that you lose is you don't get any more software updates. And that makes perfect sense. Software updates require more work to make, and so it's understandable to ask for compensation regard. That's actually why, for example, the only subscription license that I would ever accept is SolidWorks. SolidWorks has a personal subscription license that's $50 a year. That's $50 a year for $5,000 software. I won't live long enough to pay $5,000 at $50 a year. That's super cheap access to some very expensive software. But in general, software subscriptions should be illegal. The only reason software subscriptions are even legal is because our court system has incorrectly determined that when you buy software, you're not actually buying the software, you're buying a license. And that's wrong. That is constitutionally incorrect. That is an unlawful takings. The courts don't agree with me. Courts are wrong. You may not agree with me. I think you're wrong. But in this instance, that doesn't even come up. He is trying to create a license to control the use of what he does not own. He can grant a limited, non-transferable license to the software because he owns the software. That's like you renting a car and the rental company saying, now, you can't go and sell this car to someone else. Why can't I sell the car to someone else? I have access to the car, don't I? Of course I do. Because I don't own it. I don't own it. He has the right to control the use of his software because I don't own the software. However, he can't control the use of what I make with software. So if I rent a race car Okay, like rent a race car. The rental company knows I'm going to race this car. All right, it's not me renting a personal car and then going and race legally. I'm renting a race car. The company understands that I'm going to race this car in a race. Okay, I then go and run the race and win. They can't claim the purse. It doesn't belong to them. It's not theirs. They can claim to be the winners of that race because they didn't race it. I did. Okay. Again, Photoshop can't claim to own your picture that you bring into, or I'm sorry, Adobe can't claim to own the picture you bring into Lightroom. They can't control your commercial usage of the picture. They can't control how long your license is, who your license is, who you can transfer it to, because they don't own it. You do. When Steve brought this picture into HueForge, I don't know where he got it. Let's assume Steve created this picture and he didn't just download this off the internet. A lot of the stuff you're seeing on HueForge is just stuff people download on the internet. That's why he's going to get himself in big trouble with those license terms. He actually tries to care, because eventually he's going to piss off the wrong person. But wrong one. Let's assume Steve from HueForge actually made this, whatever this is, okay? I don't think he did, but let's say Steve made that picture, that is his original creation. Okay? If he brings that into Photoshop and touches it up, Adobe does not own the picture. And they are legally not permitted to put terms in the contract that says they do, because their contract can only govern their property. They can't limit his commercial usage of that output because they don't own it. It's his. It belongs to Steve. I don't know how else to explain it. There are, when the moment you click the save button in any creation software, whether it be Microsoft Word, whether it be Microsoft Excel, whether it be Forge, whether it be Simplify 3, whether it be Lightroom or Photoshop, the moment you click that save button, there are now two lawful licenses at play. You have the license of the software, in which case the software designer is the licensor and I licensee. They can apply restrictions because they own the software. The second that's splitting hairs. The second license is the license for the creative works I created when I click the save button. That license is mine. That's not HueForge's license. That's Chris Taylor's license. In that license, I am the licensor. HueForge is the licensee. And HueForge is claiming they're the licensee. And you can see that in his statement, where he honestly thinks that he owns the STL file that is generated when you click save. That's why he said, well, if you made the STL file in some other software and just painted it in my software, I made the photograph in some other program, and I'm just painting that photograph into an STL file in your software. The same terms apply. He doesn't own it. And by purporting to claim that he owns that STL file, he's claiming that he owns, at minimum, one variant of your intellectual property. He can't do that. And no, he wouldn't be claiming ownership of the illegal property, because there's no such thing as illegal property. What you have is illegal use or illegal possession, or things that are illegal are what you do, not what you have. At least it's supposed to be. That gets weird. But no, you would be the one conducting the illegal activity. Oh God, I wish I had a better way to articulate this. I understand it here, but converting it into words that create that same understanding in your mind is difficult. Mostly because I am very ignorant of these concepts. That's not the point, though, Ethan. This is a matter of principle and ethics. It's a matter of morals. Regardless of whether I agree with the license or not, I'm violating the license if I don't adhere to it. And our legal system is not a very just system. It's a very fucked up system. Uh, should fix it, yes. Exactly. And the CAD software also has no right to the DXF file you output or the AutoCAD file you output. Okay, the output of the software belongs to the person who created it, not to the software or the software's creators. Only the software belongs to AutoCAD or TurboCAD or what's that other one? Oh, there was one more older CAD program I used to use. Rhino? RhinoCAD? Might have been RhinoCAD. There was another CAD program out when AutoCAD was around, when they were older, like AutoCAD 12 days. Back when it was on 386 and 46 computers. I still have, I think I threw them away in Pennsylvania. But up until I left Pennsylvania, I still had all the original box and documentation from my auto version. There's a set of manuals like this thick. I definitely made AutoCAD do a lot of things it was intended to do. I'd turn in stuff and be like, "You used what to make this?" AutoCAD, because at the time we had a plotter, and it was a four color, a four pen plotter, and it could also do 11 by 17 paper. So I can make an 8.5 by 11 fold document using AutoCAD, and I could do it in four colors, which at the time you couldn't do. That didn't exist yet, and even when they did, they were really expensive. So I started using AutoCAD as a drawing program and a um, word processing program because I had so much control over shape and color that I didn't have or couldn't afford with something like Word or Notepad. And so, my book reports had, CAD drawings on them and had four colors and stuff like that because I could. But when you bring your intellectual property into a piece of software, you are not and you cannot be compelled to give up your intellectual property rights. When you bring a photograph into HueForge, you still own the photograph, all rights reserved. That includes all variants and derivatives that you create, which would mean the variant or derivative you create using HueForge is still your property. It belongs to you. HueForge is not allowed to restrict your use of that property. Exactly. Um, um, it's important to understand that when you create something in the US, copyright is automatic. So you draw a drawing on your hand. You own the copyright to that drawing the moment you draw it. That is, you don't have to assert it. You don't have to proclaim it. You don't have to register. Now, registering it does allow you to collect damages and does make your case stronger when you go to court, but it's not required. The copyright is automatic on inception. When you create a work, a variant, or derivative, you own the copyright to it. That belongs to you. It's yours. It's also your actual property. You physically own it. That file is not licensed to you. You own that file. You are the creator of that file. You own it. You're the one who issues licenses for it. So if I made a logo for DeWitt and I used HueForge to generate that logo, I can choose to sell the rights to that to DeWitt, and now he would own it and he could license it out as he sees fit, or I can license it to him. I can grant him limited commercial use of that work. But that would be tricky because I'm also using his intellectual property. The DeWitt logo belongs to DeWitt, not me. But that's we're splitting hairs now. I hope he fixes it because I love the creating stuff like this. Where the hell is the mouse cursor? You know, seeing people create stuff like this that has incredible 3D effect. It's a painting, but it was made with a 3D printer. That's just awesome. That is an awesome piece of software. He deserves to make what he can selling that software because he did an awesome thing doing it. Wouldn't it suck to find out he used open source or other people's intellectual property to make it? Boy, would that. But he deserves to profit from it. It's his software. He has the right to set the terms for the use of his software, but he doesn't have the right to set the terms for my property. He does not have that right. He just can't do that. Even if I take the personal version and commercially, the limit of his rights is to void my license to the software because he requires a commercial license to use it commercially. But that's where it stops. It stops at lawful access to his software. He can't claim ownership of the stuff you make with the software because that's your property. You own that. You know, Radio Shack tried to do that. When I worked for Radio Shack a time ago, they tried to get me to sign a document that said anything I invented while employed by Radio Shack, not a work for hire. Radio Shack, hey, invent this for me. Use the stuff we have for. No, just by being an employee. If I were to invent anything during my employment plus 5 years after my employment, that they would own the patent for it. I looked at my boss and I was like, is this a joke? I was like, over my dead body am I signing this? Matter of fact, correction, I am signing this. And I wrote across the entire paper, is this a joke? Over my dead body, do you own the patent to anything I create that is not a work for hire? Signed, Chris. And I handed that back to him. I mean, even if they did trick people into signing that, it's not legal. No court in the country would accept that an employee making $7 an hour understood the implications of what they just signed. Wow. Now, when it's your job to invent stuff, that's different. When you create something, when you're working for Raytheon and you design and create a new missile or a new refrigeration system, that's a work for hire. You're being hired to create something. So yes, the company would own the intellectual property, the patents for whatever you create while employed by them. And they could theoretically argue that stuff you create outside of your employment is also to some extent theirs if you use material or resources from your employment. They could argue that, and that would be valid because that's a work for hire scenario. I'm not being hired by HughForge. They can't claim work for hire. They're just a software creator like Microsoft Word or Adobe Lightroom. So I hope he fixes it. I hope he fixes it. All right. I'll see you guys next week, and hopefully I'll have this computer fixed. If I haven't gotten the replacement parts or fixed the computer by then, I'll use a laptop or something like that to or my phone to bypass, because I think this phone has a better camera than my laptop does. It's a Sony. It's got a really nice camera in it. The Ender 3 upgrade going. Also, there will be no live stream on the 26th. Wednesday the 26th, there won't be a live stream because I got to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, drive into Albuquerque, and pick up Thomas from the airport at 9 o'clock. And then we're out to Lordsburg for Narum. I will be back on Tuesday, which means the live stream for August 3rd will be no problem. So the only one that I will miss will be the live stream on the 26th of July. I might, if there's data, if I have a data signal at the field, I might do a live stream from the field, show some of the stuff people have there, especially if there's some 3D printed stuff. You could definitely show some of my rockets. Probably just record clips and post a video, because then I can do the 3D printing specific stuff and post a general rocket video to my rocketry channel. But yeah, we're going to leave. I don't know why he wants to leave that early. He's 2 years old, so I guess he wants time to recuperate. Especially because it's going to be our higher altitude location for him. And hot. It's still high elevation, like 4,300 feet or something like that. But it's still going to be a whole lot hotter than here. And we're hitting 96 degrees today. There is something to say for dry heat, but it's dry. It's still hot. So that's it. I will see you guys later. And yes, I am going to go for a walk. I need to walk more often, a lot more often. So I will see you guys later. HughForge, if you're listening, I hope you correct the mistakes in your license. I hope you recognize that what you're trying to do is wrong, that you can't claim ownership to other people's intellectual property, including the variants and derivatives created with your software. They belong to the creator, not you. You're not the creator. You're just the tool. You're just the paintbrush. You're just the pliers. You're just the socket set. You're just the chisel. You're just the canvas. You're the tools that people use to create works. An amazing tool. An awesome tool. But still just a tool.